Alright, so I'm going to be making another one of these. This is a quick tutorial on how to reach the moon with a rover and a satellite in the same rocket. So I hope this can help you out. The only problem that you might want to mess around with if you don't have the part clipping enabled or you don't have that DLC is you might want to just remove this solar panel on this side. But that's fine, whatever. This will work. So without me talking anymore, I will start and we will turn on the rocket. So this rocket is pretty beefy, and that is because I kind of modeled it after the good old Saturn V, but it's not particularly like that. It's just, I wanted this to be a bigger rocket, I guess, which it is, so that's definitely good. And I'm glad that not all the rockets in this game are just so tiny and optimized. This is definitely not optimized, but it's just fun to mess around with such huge towers, you know? Huge monstrosities of a rocket. But, so, this tutorial is going to be just, you know, your average getting to the moon. But I find this rocket really fascinating because it has a lander in the form of a rover and a lander in the form of, or sorry, not a lander. It has one lander and then a satellite in the same rocket, so you can do both with just one launch, which I think is very epic. So, as you can see, we're already almost out of fuel on this first stage, which is not a problem because we've got our next stages. So, once this runs out of fuel, turn on this stage and we'll see how we're doing. Now this stage right here is kind of unnecessary. It's just not really needed, but it's just good to have if you want to mess around with your orbit a lot. So I'll fast forward. Alright, so we're expanding our orbit, which is great, but this engine isn't really going to help us with that, so we'll use this instead. This is better for just in space. It's more efficient, definitely. And one thing that everybody should know is that by tilting your rocket upwards to where you're going forwards to, that makes you stay in the air for longer. Or it's not in the air, we're not in air. Stay in orbit for longer. Like if you're way past your highest point, you might want to angle up a little bit so that the highest point catches up to you. Yeah, and then angling down obviously would make the highest point go way behind, which is not good. So I'll skip to when we have orbit. Alright, so we've reached our low Earth orbit. We don't need it to be symmetrical just because this is only a transfer orbit to the moon, which we can transfer to by clicking on the moon and clicking navigate to. This will give us a transfer window. We'll fast forward to that transfer window. Oh, a little farther. Alright, and that'll tell you how much faster you need to go. So we'll just angle towards the direction we need to head and turn on our engine until we are going that fast. Alright, so we're about to get to the spot we need to be at. There we go. So now if we just kept orbiting like this, we would just crash into the moon, which is why we have our RCS turned on so that we can kind of just adjust this at a much more close and precise amount. So now I'll just fast forward until we have encountered the sphere of influence of the moon, which we just did, and now we are just above the moon, which is pretty cool. It's just right there. So now I'll turn on the engine, and we will be slowing down so that we're not going to blast off into space again. Alright, so once we've reached this point, we have our rocket, our booster stage, our satellite, and our lander, rover, and we could, in theory, just disconnect them all separately here, and that would be all great. And we would be able to land the rover just fine. But I find it a lot cooler, personally, to bring this really low to the surface and then land the rover and just have a super low orbiting satellite. And of course you can raise that up in the future if you want to, it doesn't matter. But that's what I'm going to be doing today. And remember that if you want to just keep the satellite orbiting up high, just do exactly what I'm doing here, except higher up. And it's going to be hard to think about in terms of the same thing, but just remember the directions, remember the rotations, remember like how I'm turning to land the rover compared to the moon and the satellite. So if you want to just drop the rover from up here, by all means, you can do that. But if you want to do what I'm doing and bring both of them down closer before doing it, then that's what I'm going to be showing you how to do here. So to do that, we'll just turn on our engine and get very close so that we're only about 1,000 up, which is fine. And then we'll fast forward. It'll tell us we can't warp below 500 meters, so we'll disconnect that, turn off RCS, clear our debris so that that goes away. And now we're just going to be really fast and really low to the moon. So we want to get lower. That's the goal. We want to get lower. We want to make this a circle. We want to make this a good circle. And then that is something we can use. So if we lower that down, I mean, that's pretty close. I think that'll be fine. That's actually going to crash us into it, so we don't want to go that low. That looks good. So now what we can do is we can release them. Bruh. Okay, hold on. Let me just extend that. Yeah. You can extend the solar panel if it's causing you problems when undocking. So the rover is disconnected. The satellite is disconnected. We want to make sure this won't crash into the surface. There we go. That will not crash into the surface. And now we're going to switch to the rover. So with the rover, what we want to do is just slow down as much as possible. Slowing down and trying to get both of these numbers just as low as possible. This number right here and this number right here, we want them to be just as close to 0 as possible. That is the goal for right now. So you can turn your satellite or your rover diagonal just like this to help you do this. And you want this to be low so that you won't crash into the ground. If you crash into the ground, that's just, you're over, you're done. So now we have that pretty low. We'll just continue to do this. I think this will be a good, just stable situation to be burning in. And basically we just want this to get as low as possible so that we don't crash. We don't just become tumbling along the surface of the moon. And now we can see our rover just a little bit above the surface and still slowing down. Doing great. It's getting really close to just being done. And as we see this slowing down more and more, this on the map will become more and more vertical. And now this has become 0. So now we're just heading straight down. And I'm actually going to move us over onto this flat ground just so that we're a little bit easier to land on instead of being on that crater, because that's just not a nice landing surface. So if you have your RCS position like this, turning upright like this can be very helpful to get just all 4 RCS doing work than just the couple. So just like any other landing, you just want to lower yourself down slowly. Ooh, I lost control a little bit there, but we should be fine. Yeah, we're fine. So just making sure you're not ever going too fast. and keeping yourself stable as you land. We're getting very close here. I'm going to turn this way. And we have landing. Nice. So now we will take a look at the satellite we have, which is positioned perfectly right now. And for this, it's just like that. We want to get it to be just a very low orbit. So right now, this satellite is not orbiting. It will crash. It will crash into the moon. But what we want to do is reach our highest point, and once we're at the highest point, that's where we can just maneuver perfectly our whole orbit at once. So you want to... Okay, so now we're close enough. We just want to make ourselves be going a little faster. And now we are in orbit. This is a real orbit. This is an actual orbit that will work for you. So you can theoretically even descend this a little more. You just want to be careful to make sure you're never going to crash. And it doesn't look like we will. So this is a... Ooh, that is close, but it doesn't crash. It doesn't look like. So this is a very nice, very goofy orbit that your satellite should now be in. And you know, you don't have to do this very goofy part of this tutorial if you don't want. You can just drop the rover from high up, and that will work just fine. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope this was a goofy and helpful tutorial, because it was very goofy for me to make.